Glad you're here. The Last Straw by Alfred Volk. Russian Samyuk University has been in battle since it opened its doors. It began in Korea, part of the university in Korea, soon after Russian jet flyers shot down a Korean air jetliner east of the island called Sakhalin. Russian Samyuk University is situated on that island and bears mute testimony that through Christ it is possible to love even your enemies. Started in rented quarters, the school had to relocate several times during its first year. As it was impossible to conduct classes under those circumstances for long, the administrators searched for the building they could buy. They were delighted when they heard of a private school for sale and contacted the owner. They agreed at a price and drew up the contracts. Convinced that everything was in order, they paid the sum in cash. But in the transition from communism to capitalism, laws changed almost daily, and the sale didn't comply with the most recent laws. In the meantime, the seller had left town. Since then, ownership of the school had been contested in the courts on an ongoing basis, with seesaw results. At one point, the Russian court ruled that the sale was invalid and that the Korean Union Conference did not own the school property, putting the license to operate the university in peril. The licenses for the various departments were set to expire at the end of December 2001 and could not be renewed unless Russian Samyuk could present proof that it owned or leased the building where the classes were being held. Actually, I taught nurses English at Samyuk University in Korea. Pastor Song Woo Moo, the school's president, remained convinced that it is a strategic part of God's work, a very important institution. Besides Russians and Koreans, the city, and I couldn't begin to pronounce the name of the city there, where the school is located, has representatives of 116 people groups. So my work done there can have far-reaching results. Pastor Song determined to do everything he could to keep the school open. I remember those years when they were having trouble there. The university offers degrees in linguistics, theology, music, as well as diploma courses in English and computers. In fact, some friends of ours taught English there. The foreign students who attend the English Language Institute, mostly Korean and China, keep it financially solvent. To help the foreign students, Pastor Song made arrangements so that the airport transport airline employees could get a 30% discount on English courses, and the school's teachers and students got a 30% discount on airfares. Fair about. The plan worked without a hitch for 2 years, until the end of March 2001. One Friday, Pastor Song and Pastor Leonid, the business manager, went to the airline office with $6,000 to purchase airline tickets for incoming Korean students. Heavy snow from a recent blizzard forced Song to park his car some distance from the office, and the two men walked the rest of the way. Taking a letter from the airline transport president authorizing the discount, they picked their way through the snow to the ticket agency. Through force of habit, Pastor Song felt his coat pocket before entering to make sure that the money was there. But it wasn't. A search of his other pockets and car proved equally fruitless. Panic seized him. With all the problems and constant interruptions of that morning, had he forgotten the money in his office? Had he been the victim of a pickpocket? Converted to Russian currency, the money amounted to about 171,600 rubles, a small fortune. With missionaries living on a stipend of $150 a month, it was enough to support 4 staff members for almost a year. Let's go back to the school, urged Pastor Song. Maybe I left the money in my office. But a thorough search revealed nothing. Please go back to the airline office, he asked Pastor Leonid, his voice tight with strain. Search the ground everywhere. We walked. I'll stay in my office and pray. An hour later, Pastor Leonid returned, empty-handed. It was imperative to get the tickets before the close of that business day. So Pastor Song borrowed more money and went to the ticket agency to make the transaction. Even though he had a letter from the president of the airline, the agent refused to honor the agreement. She insisted that the letter needed another signature. This had never happened before. Every other time, dozens of times, he had obtained the tickets at a discount with no problems. It seemed like the straw that broke the camel's back. The office would close soon, and it would be a race against time to try to get the treasurer's signature. With only minutes to spare, Pastor Song drove back, parked his car, and walked to the office, as he had done 4 hours earlier. Snow piled 6 feet high along the sidewalk allowed pedestrians only a narrow path on which to make their way, as they walked with their eyes toward the ground, watching for icy patches. It was a busy part of town, and thousands of feet had tramped through there since morning. As Song and Pastor Leonard walked over the route once again that day, Pastor Song imagined the original envelope of money lying on the snow. He imagined it. He dismissed the image. After 4 hours, it was impossible that the money would still be there. When Pastor Leonard had gone to search for the envelope, there was a slight chance. But now, Song glanced at a man beside the road repairing the rear tire of his car. A young boy, perhaps the man's son, stood beside him. Looking back to the snowy path, Pastor Song saw a fat envelope lying a few feet away. One corner was ripped, and through it, greenbacks were visible. Song stopped and picked up the envelope, the entire $6,000 intact. Until that moment, Pastor Song couldn't understand why the airline transport agent would not honor the letter from the company's president. But if he hadn't walked that route one more time, God would not have shown him that he cared and could not, in this way, turn a loss into victory. Since this incident took place, an agreement with the city had been reached, enabling the university to renew its license to operate. Kim Cho-won has taken over the presidency and is working with the Russian Ministry of Education to gain full accreditation for the university, which they have today. After almost 4 years of service to the school, Pastor Song recently began studies here in the United States for a Doctor of Ministry degree. This was written by Elfriede Folk. For several years, she and her husband were missionaries in various parts, and her husband carried different responsibilities at the Russian Samyuk University. Okay, but God still hears and answers prayers, and he takes pretty good care of his children and his institutions. Samyuk needed all the help they could get at that time, and still does. Don't miss the flight. My husband says that when I pass away at my funeral, he's going to be sure that I'm there on time. But anyhow, he has a thing about my not being on time. So listen to this. There's always a reason. We always anticipated trips to Manila. This is written by Jeannie Zachary. She and her husband are great. Her husband is died some years ago, but they're a great, great couple. Wonderful people. I especially looked forward to shopping in larger marketplaces than were found near our workplace at Mountain View College in the Philippines. We live 5 hours from the nearest airport. In the dry season, the trip meant 5 hours of dust. By holding a handkerchief over your nose, you could filter the air moving into your lungs. How good it was to take a shower after that long, dusty trip. In the wet season, the trip was 5 hours of slipping and sliding in the mud. My husband Jim would buckle up the plastic sides of our old Jeep in an attempt to keep the splashing mud out of the vehicle. Despite the dusty or muddy conditions, it was still worth the long trip to go shopping in Cebu City or Manila. On this occasion, we rose shortly after midnight to make the long trip to the coast. There, Jim and I boarded an aircraft to the airport in Manila. Our flight north made a refueling stop in Cebu City. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, Cebu. All passengers were asked to step inside the airport terminal. While Jim was down with a book, I headed for the numerous small shops in a building adjoining the terminal. The shopping was great. There were many things to see. I had a list. Friends had asked me to purchase things for them. Anyone bound for the city always took a shopping list for their friends. After several months at a remote college campus, I had developed quite a hunger for shopping. I was unaware of the passing of time and did not hear the call to reboard the flight as I moved from shop to shop with my list. Jim, her husband, boarded the aircraft. My seat beside him was empty. In response to his request, the flight attendant asked the pilot to have the ground staff make an announcement. Jeannie Zachary, your aircraft is about to leave. Board immediately. In the noise of the crowds, I did not hear that last call. Finally, with my arms filled with packages, I headed for the waiting room. It was empty. I rushed for the boarding gates. From the doorway, I could see that the door of the aircraft was shut. The aircraft was moving. I could make out the hand of my husband helplessly waving goodbye as the aircraft taxied toward the airstrip. I had missed my flight. Why? I had been preoccupied with other things. I learned a precious lesson that day. It is easy to become infatuated with the things of this life. There are many things that can distract me from preparing for Jesus' return. I need to keep my focus on what's most important to me. The space flight to paradise is one I don't want to miss. In place of heaven, one would have only an armful of worthless earthly treasures. That would be a great tragedy. Nothing in this world is more important. Nothing in this world is important enough to give the Lord's return second place in your life. I want to have a vital personal relationship with Jesus, moment by moment. Peter's counsel speaks to my need. The end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober, and watch unto prayer. Later that day, I took another flight. It stopped in several cities on the way to Manila. It was good to see that Jim was waiting for me at the arrival area. But there is only one flight to paradise, one flight to heaven. By God's grace, I am determined not to miss it. Jeannie Zachary, retired, lives in Cherry Valley, California, and she's very active with ministry there even yet today. God bless you, and don't miss your flight to eternity with Jesus.